What happens when a university has recently been in the news in basketball for the wrong reasons, and then you add in a football coach, very iconic in nature, having a garden variety press conference where he says something he has said repeatedly over the last decade and a half? Answer: everyone freaks out. They lose their minds. What am I talking about here? Well, I think most of you are familiar with what's happened around the Alabama basketball program lately, and not just the run deep into March Madness, but you had all of the off-the-court issues, which we're not here to talk about because everyone already has an opinion on that. And you may or may not have been aware that Alabama's still going to play football this year, too. So Nick Saban has his normal beginning of spring press conference yesterday. And I'm about to have Colin play something for you, and it's going to sound normal until you realize, some people framed this against the backdrop of what's been going on, and it was just a recipe for internet disaster. Roll it, Colin.
Tony Mitchell has been suspended from the team and all team activities until we gather more information about the situation and what his legal circumstance is. And, guys, everybody's got an opportunity to make choices and decisions. There's no such thing in being at the wrong place at the wrong time. You got to be responsible for who you're with, who you're around, and what you do, who you associate yourself with, and the situations that you put yourself in. So it is what it is, but there is, cause and effect when you make, choices and decisions.
Yeah, a little backstory there. Tony Mitchell got popped for apparently eluding police at 141 miles an hour down in Florida while in possession of copious amounts of marijuana. So he's in trouble. That's the true freshman that Saban's talking about. But according to several internet sources, Nick Saban was also talking about Nate Oates. He's talking about the basketball coach. That's a shot across the bow at his own athletic department. We have been accused of things on this show before. Jesse, I don't know if you've been made aware of this. Colin, I think I have shielded you guys from this. But on various corners of the internet, this very show, Late Kick, has been accused of trafficking in clickbait. Can you believe that? Clickbait every now and then. I always vigorously defend ourselves against those allegations because we're not a clickbait show. If you want evidence of that, I want you to listen to what I'm about to say over about the next 5 minutes. Because there is no more big chunk of red meat hanging out over the digital media space right now than saying that man, Nick Saban, is talking about his basketball coach. I want you to understand how much traffic it would do if I went down that road. And since everyone else is doing it, I wouldn't get in trouble if I said it. And can you imagine what kind of thumbnail Director Colin could put together? And can you imagine me putting the text on that YouTube thumbnail that says something along the lines of, Saban dunks on his own athletic department? The click-through rate would be insane. We would make so much money off of that. The retention would be beautiful, and yet it would be a lie, and so I'm not going to say it. So just remember that in the future. When you want to call us clickbait Pate, don't say clickbait Pate, please, never. I don't want to start that. Let me explain to you what just happened. What you just heard is Nick Saban say something that I've probably heard him say a million times. The year was 2008. Nick Saban's 1 year into his tenure at Alabama. He comes to Columbus, Georgia. I pay $40 to go and listen to him at the Columbus Convention and Trade Center. That night, he made a quote. I remembered it up until this very day. He said, right place, right time is largely an illusion. The reality is you put yourself in the right place and the right time finds you. And then he wagged his finger and said, wrong place, wrong time works the same way. You put yourself in the wrong place long enough and the wrong time will eventually find you. Obviously, if you're in a random car wreck or you win the lottery, yes, there are exceptions to those general life rules, but Nick Saban, I have probably heard him say this thing like 1 or 2 dozen times in his tenure at Alabama. So he had a kid get popped for multiple transgressions against the law, and he suspended him until further notice, and he said what he always says. And then the internet did what it does in March with nothing better to talk about. Now, I think that you need to pay attention to how the loudest takes on this matter have been made largely by people the furthest away from the program with the least amount of intimate knowledge on the day-to-day workings of Alabama football. Because if you know a little bit about Nick Saban, if you've been around him at all, if you've been around the program at all, number one, that's not how he's about to handle his business on that front. And number two, he has no clue what's going on, largely, outside of that football program. Now, irresponsibly today, I did something. Instead of just running with an opinion, I actually did some digging around Alabama. And I know that's a dirty thing this day and age, and I apologize for it. I should have just run my mouth without knowing what I was talking about. But some of us still have the audacity to turn over a few rocks before we just baselessly speculate. And what I found is what I expected. And what I found was it had nothing to do whatsoever with basketball. Now, you could say, well, Josh, that's just what they want you to think. Well, if you're trying to sell me that he was using that public platform to deliver not a spontaneous, but a premeditated shot at his basketball coach, would the University of Alabama not readily back that up? Would we not even have to guess about it? Would it not have been re-emphasized? See, I've made statements before. I've done it. The last thing that I wanted to do then is backtrack once I made the statement, especially if it's prepared. So there's a lot of baseless sort of logical approaches people have taken to this. But look, at the end of the day, I understand. I understand how this entire media industry works. I get it. Should I go down this? I'll go down this. I'm not going to go down this road for long. But I will tell you this. There's a reality that I think a lot of you understand about the space that I'm in. I certainly understand it. We don't call ourselves journalists on this show. We don't call this a journalism show. We do not call ourselves reporters. You've never heard me call myself a journalist or a reporter, nor will you. That is not the job I do. If you want to call me a commentator, that's fine. You want to call me some dude who looks homeless in the way he dresses, that's okay. But what I am not is I am not someone who wears that press hat. I don't wear the lapel that says journalist because I don't see myself fulfilling that role. The only difference in maybe me and some other folks is they continue to hide behind that, guys, because the way a lot of folks approach our industry is not from a journalistic angle at all, or at least the way they taught me journalism once upon a time. And I noticed this a lot more when we started to do things with CBS and with 24/7, not to mention any names specifically, not to mention any outlets specifically. Okay, so we're covered from a PR standpoint there. I noticed that there were a lot of folks who were the least excited about their jobs on Saturdays in the fall. I swear to you, this never occurred to me before I really got here to where I could cover the sport from a national level. I realized there were a lot of folks who were the least excited about their jobs on Saturdays in the fall, which makes no sense to you. If you're listening to me in Ann Arbor, Michigan, you think if you cover college football, your world revolves around those 12 Saturdays in the fall, does it not? If you love the sport, it does. Not everyone who covers the sport loves the sport. There's a surefire place for hard-nosed journalism in college athletics. I would argue now more than ever. Absolutely, there's a lane for that. The garbage that you're seeing in a lot of cases, including this thing with Saban and Oates, is not hardcore anything other than hardcore trash. That's pretty much what you've witnessed over the past 12 to 24 hours in that front. But there's a reason why a lot of folks seemed overly eager and excited to find the nearest microphone or nearest internet and Wi-Fi connection, because this is what excites them. This is what turns them on. To each his and her own. I'm just telling you, the way we do things on this show, there's a reason for it. There's a purpose behind it. Because when I was down in Columbus working in local news and I assessed the landscape, I didn't like it. So I'm a fan, and I'm going to the places I've always gone to get my sports fix and my college football fix, and more I saw it turning into this. And so finally, you got to look in the mirror and say, well, don't complain about it. Do something about it. So we did something about it, and we tried to build a show where we don't do that sort of thing. And it's been, I think, we've been very successful here because we don't take that tact. But a lot of folks do. So you got two choices. This ultimately comes down to you. It does not come down to any writer or any blogger or any commentator. It comes down to you. You're the reason that any of us exist. And so if you don't give me traffic, if you don't give him clicks, if you don't give her downloads, eventually we disappear because we're not worth it to our own company. And so if you don't like something in mass that exists in the current marketplace, don't pay attention to it. And I would say, regrettably, the same thing about this show. You don't like it, don't pay attention to it. I'll either have to change my tone or CBS will fire me. That's how that works. That's how it'll always work. So you may see things evolving, you may see things deteriorating, but there is one universal truth, and that is you will determine which voices get amplified, because if you're not there, they won't be amplified for very long. So if you don't like the way that things are being handled, that's my best advice. But As far as this Nick Saban thing, he's not talking about Nate Oates. Absolutely was not talking about him. Case closed, the end. Probably not the end, the more I think about it. But case closed as far as us talking about it on this show.